Thank you very much, Tsepiso. And we're also joined by the ANC National Chairperson as well as the Minerals Minister, Gwede Mantashe. We'll chat to him briefly, and as you said, I'm here with my colleague Mzwandile Mbeje. Looking at the board, let's just set it up for the ANC. Predictions, they would fall below 50%. Sure, and this is painful. We'll get Mr. Mantashe's view.
Certainly, but of course, there is no way they will admit that it's painful. But fortunately, the chair is here. Dipping below 50, if these were national elections, clearly they would have lost elections. Of course, they're still a leading party in terms of the votes, but in terms of forming government on their own, it wouldn't have been possible. So that, Francis, translates into a number of the hung municipalities that we are seeing.
51, according to last count, which is incredible.
Actually, 52 now.
52?
Yes.
Minister, I guess there are two theories. One, I think you've said that this is a sign that democracy in South Africa is maturing. So some would agree with you on that. Are you putting on a brave face? That's another theory. Or the third theory, it could have been worse and the ANC is actually relieved.
No, I don't need to be brave. We deal with the reality here. It's elections. But if you just see it one way, that many of you, when you do analysis, you analyze this election as if it's elections about the ANC. And it's not election about the ANC. The ANC is one contestant of the elections. We're doing relatively well. The second biggest party after us is less than half of our size. Yes, below 50, if it was. It's not national election, it's not provincial elections. Even if it was provincial elections, in provinces, there would be provinces that will lead. For example, 6 of the provinces, the ANC is more than 50%. There are 3 provinces where we're battling. The only worry is that 3 provinces where we're battling is where there are major metropolitans, which means that the ANC has a duty now to have 2 strategies. Have a focus strategy for metropolitans and a focus strategy for the rural areas, so that you don't disproportionately spend more time on metros and don't get the returns at the expense of the rural.
Chairperson, what would you attribute this decline to? Yes, if you look at the history electorally, you've been somehow declining, but dipping below 50 is a first. What are you attributing this to? The
issue is that I took one journalist during the day. He said, look at the floor. Every second party on the floor is an offspring of the ANC. Now, if Mzwandile, like you and me, we grew up in the area where there are spiritual churches, when people in the congregation say amen in numbers, I break away from my own congregation. And it's a new church, and I'm called Archbishop, but I have 20 members. It is going to happen in politics, it happens everywhere. It's a culture of us in South Africa. Many of them, the numbers of people who propagate our ideological framework is not declining. What is declining is the numbers in the ANC.
Is there something you are doing wrong? Hence, people keep breaking away.
You know, if you are in an organization like the ANC, speak, and you have ideas that you think are brilliant, and they are suffocated in the big ANC, you break away. It may not necessarily mean that you are doing something wrong. It may mean that I'm intolerant of having my ideas being suffocated in the ANC. And I go away and form SG ANC, and I register it. And people think that there's something new. It's myself walking away from suffocation. The space is too congested. Some people will say it openly, that in the ANC you are in a long queue, you will never reach the top easily. And people are impatient of that. But in some instances, people are irritated by certain things in the ANC.
Chair, did I hear you quoted correctly that you said that looking at the run-up to these elections, ESCOM was the ANC's biggest opposition? Did you say that?
Yes. You know, in 1994, 39% of South Africans had access to electricity. Today, 87% of South Africans are having access to electricity. We're working on the 13% to have universal access to electricity. But if you deprive people access to that electricity, you are actually turning a positive development into a nightmare. I looked at Katlehong. Eskom switches off electricity there because of some problems there for 3 months. And obviously, if you take away electricity from people in an area as big as Katlehong in Ekurhuleni, you are destroying confidence in government, and we can't run away from it. We are a governing party. Eskom is a state entity, so we are responsible in a way.
Two quick questions on Eskom, because to me, I thought what was perhaps not obvious to everybody is that the governing party is not manipulating Eskom in the 5 days leading up to an election. You don't have the president saying you will not load shed. Do you think people missed that as possibly a positive sign, ironically?
No, it's always a positive sign not to manipulate an entity.
Well, can you confirm there was no manipulation?
No, we don't have manipulate operations. We're not operational. We're political. We can express a desire that there will be no load shedding. In the middle of the second day, there's load shedding. You get shock of your life, but it's there, it's reality. You must deal with that reality.
My second question was, there was a clear difference, a clear contradiction in what you said following what Minister Gwede said about, he was talking about what's not being added to the grid. It's not Eskom's fault. You then put the blame on Eskom. They must get their coal power stations right. Then the minister started talking, the president started talking about cable theft. My question is, shouldn't you as ANC leaders have gotten together before and decided how you communicate a problem like Eskom?
The reality of the matter is that it is positive for ANC leaders to communicate problems in society as they see them or as they experience them. For example, we have 45,000 megawatts connected in Eskom. That is capacity connected. But we hardly reach 33,000 megawatts. Sometimes it drops up to 28,000 megawatts. Therefore, it is capacity availability. That is a problem. Whether it is me who says it or it is Minister Kotan who says it, it's a problem to have a capacity connected but have almost half that is available, 62% available. It's a problem, and we must deal with that and ensure that that monopoly as electricity supplier is optimized and it gives us results. Then any supplementary program that is adding electricity there, your renewables, your other technologies that you are mobilizing, must add to an optimal mainstay entity.
Well, back to the leaderboard and the hung council's chairperson. I know you've said through the press conference you are willing to work with anyone who obviously shares, I would say, your objective. Is the DA the number one party that you are speaking to in terms of forming the coalition?
No, the DA disagrees with that politically and ideologically. We can form a coalition with the DA as our councillors against advice did that in Kanaland, and they were swapped aside there. We don't have any visibility in Kanaland today because we'll disagree on transformation first, and we'll disagree on black economic empowerment and fight for 5 years. So I don't know if it is worth going there. DA Light called Action South Africa. You can't talk to them because they are the same. They are just broken away from the DA, but ideologically they are the same. So you don't waste your time with them. You talk to people who actually have some semblance of agreement with your program.
Okay, so we have to leave it there because the IEC is about to start that press conference. Thank you for being willing to discuss Eskom and coalitions ruling out any sort of agreement with the DA. But we do have the Independent Electoral Commission wrapping things